Good evening, everyone, and welcome to OneShul. My name is Patrick Olive. I am the student rabbi of OneShul and the founder of punktorah, which is the organization that runs OneShul. We are an online synagogue dedicated to independent Jewish spirituality. We are pluralistic, meaning that we don't belong to any particular Jewish movement. We have Orthodox people, conservative, Reconstructionist, Reform, and every single flavor of Judaism possible here in one location, and we have a very diverse, awesome community of which you are now a part of. Just by showing up, you are part of this community. We're entirely free, however, we do ask that if you enjoy our videos, if you come to any of our live events, if you are using any of our resources, throw us some cash to help out. So if you come to a live event, we ask for a suggested $5 donation. Really appreciate your help. It really helps us to keep running OneShul and to offer more and more fantastic classes and resources and things like that. Tonight's class is actually the second class that we've had today on Tu B'Shvat, and it looks like we have a couple of people who have been around and a few people who are new to tonight's class who weren't in the afternoon class, and as always, it always takes a few extra minutes for people to show up, because even though we are an online community, we are not exempt from Jewish Standard Time, which is usually about 15 minutes after a time when you're supposed to show up for something. Anyway, so give everyone a chance to go on ahead and get logged into the chat room. The chat room will give you the ability to ask questions, to talk with other people in the chat room, and to have an all-around good time. We'll start by asking everyone in the chat room to let us know where you're from and what brought you here to OneShul tonight. So if you're in the chat room, and we've got several people that I actually know who are in the chat room right now, go on ahead and say where you're from, what brought you here, and we'll start off tonight's class, which is on Tu B'Shvat, the next Jewish holiday that's coming up. Tell us what your impression of Tu B'Shvat is, or maybe what is the theme of Tu B'Shvat, or maybe just a few magical keywords related to Tu B'Shvat. Other than it's a Jewish holiday, which we would hope, since this is an online synagogue, people would kind of already know that we're talking about a Jewish holiday. It looks like we've got a few people responding. Tracy from Southern Georgia. So Tracy is one of our synagogue Shabbat leaders who does an amazing Shabbat service. I'm looking forward to actually seeing more of those come up. And Tracy, we should talk about having some Shabbat services coming up soon. Outer Bank, North Carolina, welcome. Abilene, Texas. Ontario, which is awesome. And this is Darian, and Darian says that Darian is here, super new to Judaism and need to learn. So that's awesome. When we have our friend Arva, who's in outside of Atlanta, which is where I am, it seems like Alet actually gave us the answer to what Tu B'Shvat is about. So Tu B'Shvat is the birthday of the trees. Okay, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean that all the trees were born on one day? Does that mean that, one day is when all of the trees magically appear? It could mean a lot of things, right? So we have some notes for tonight's class. I'll go on ahead and pull them up, and I'm going to post a link in the chat room. But you don't necessarily have to read along with these notes. But they're here just in case you ever want to use them, and they're archived in the library. If you go on oneshul.org and click on library, or type in the search box Tu B'Shvat or some variation on that, you will find the text for tonight's class. So, Tu B'Shvat, birthday of the trees. Okay, well, what does that actually mean? Quick rundown on what Tu B'Shvat is about. So it is the 15th of the month of Shevat. So Tu is Tav and Vav. You put that together as 15. Shevat is the 15th of the holiday, the month of Shevat. Okay, and that is according to Rabbi Hillel in the Talmud. It is a minor holiday. It is non-biblical, meaning that it is not you can't find it anywhere in the Chumash. It's probably a nature festival of old. And that is sort of a best guess. We don't really know. But that is the answer that's given in a book called The Jewish Festivals by Chaim Schaus, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And it could be related to wood sacrifices in the temple. It could be that wood was given to keep the Ner Tamid going. We're not exactly sure what exactly the deal is, but that's our best guess on that one. It's only important because it's really because of the one place that it is mentioned, which is in the Mishnah of the Talmud. So it's in a tractate Rosh Hashanah 2a. So 2a or Beis Aleph, if you are a sort of Talmudic yeshivish type person. That is the beginning of tractate Rosh Hashanah, which deals with a new month. Or a new year, I should say. Now, the Jewish months and the names of the Jewish months have Babylonian origin. And actually, if you go on Wikipedia, if you go see my friend Rabbi Wikipedia, there's a whole list of all of the Babylonian months and the corresponding name in Aramaic, which is a sort of Creole type of language that was spoken in Babylon, and it was later put into, it was sort of the vernacular of the Jewish people during the exile. You can actually see a chart that's really cool that is all of the Babylonian months and their names, and all of the Hebrew months in their Aramaic names. And they match up almost perfectly, so it's very interesting. Tracy just said she likes my Rabbi Wikipedia reference. I tell you, Rabbi Wikipedia, that is a great guy. And I'm actually thinking about writing a story for our sister website, punktorah, about the idea of Rabbi Wikipedia. And maybe after class is over, we can discuss that. Okay, so we have this commentary somewhere in the Talmud in Rosh Hashanah 2a, Beit Aleph, or Beis Aleph if you're from that part of the world, and it says something about Tu B'Shvat. Okay. It later became a Kabbalistic holiday. We had this idea of a Tu B'Shvat Seder, which we're going to talk about, and then it got reinterpreted, as I should say, as an environmental holiday. So I've posted a link to the notes for tonight's class. If anyone wants to click on that, they'll have that available. Are there any questions about Tu B'Shvat before I begin sort of talking more about the holiday? And the reason why I ask now instead of just taking questions later is that it helps me to know what it is that you want to know more about with Tu B'Shvat. What interests you? So that, because with anything Jewish, with anything related to Judaism, you can talk for hours and hours about any minutia of this. I mean, we could talk about entirely halacha. We could talk entirely about the idea that the months are related to Babylonian Babylonian months. We can talk forever about the environmental idea. We can talk about the Seder. It helps for me to know what you're interested in, so that I don't ramble on about something that's off topic or not what you're interested in. So please, in the chat room, let me know kind of what you're hoping to get out of this. Darian has already started us off by saying, I'm super new to Judaism and I need to learn. So that is a blanket statement of I want to learn everything. But if anyone else has other things that they would like to learn more about, please do me a favor now and let me know. And we'll start by looking at this section of the Talmud. We're not going to go over all of the comments about Tu B'Shvat because really where the Talmud mentions Tu B'Shvat, the real argument that it has is what the actual day of Tu B'Shvat is. And not really even Tu B'Shvat, because Tu B'Shvat just means the 15th of shevat. But when is this occurrence of the new year of the trees? When does that occur? And that's a debate that happens throughout this portion of the Talmud. But we're not going to get into all of that. We're just going to gloss over it. Okay, so it looks like everyone just wants to know general information. So great. Okay, good to know. Then I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version of the Tu B'Shvat experience. All right, so we'll start here with, this is Tractate Rosh Hashanah 2a or Beis Aleph. And in the notes, the Mishnah is in capital letters and my commentary is in sort of normal letters. Okay, so Talmud says, there are 4 New Years. On the 1st of Nisan is the New Year for kings and for festivals. Goes on to say, on the 1st of Elul is the New Year for the tithe of cattle. Reb Eliezer and Reb Simeon, however, place this on the 1st of Tishrei. On the 1st of Tishrei is the new year for years, for release and jubilee years, for plantation, and for the tithe of vegetables. And then finally we get to this commentary. On the 1st of shevat is the new year for trees, according to the ruling of Beth Shammai. Beth Hillel, however, places it on the 15th of that month, meaning the 15th of shevat. Okay, so I bet you didn't know, or maybe you did know, that there are 4 New Years. So what is the New Year that we're used to? What's the New Year that we always talk about in Judaism? It's a really big deal. It's one of the few times when people actually go to a synagogue. What is that New Year? Tracy nails it. Arva nails it. It's Rosh Hashanah. That's the one New Year we all know, right? Well, and it makes sense because this is the new year for years, right? This is the new year for our calendar. Okay, so that's, that makes perfect sense, right? And this is the 1st of Tishrei, okay? But there's all these other, New Years. Okay, so we have a New Year which is the 1st of Nisan. This is the birthday of the creation of the world. We have Elul, so the time of Elul sort of gets us in preparation for the high holidays. And then we have, obviously, the high holidays. And then we have this last line in the Mishnah that on the 1st of Shevat, so 1st of Shevat, is the New Year for trees, according to Beth Shammai. Beth Hillel says 15th of Shevat. Does anyone know who Shammai and Hillel are? And no, they're not 2 ladies both named Beth. Although I had someone say that once. There's a synagogue down the street from where I live called Beth Jacob, and someone asked me who Beth Jacob is. Does anyone know Beth Hillel, Beth Shammai? Does that ring any bells with anybody? It's actually, I like to joke that this is Judaism's first rap battle, is Beth Shammai and Beth Hillel. Going once, going twice, sold to me. Okay, so Hillel and Shammai were contemporaries to each other. Eilat actually just said it, 2 schools. Okay, so Beth is the Hebrew word for house. Okay, so you had the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai. And these were 2 contemporary rabbis. They argued with each other all the time about everything. It was sort of an East Coast, West Coast thing, if you will. And so history has painted Shammai and Hillel as being polar opposites in personality. That Hillel was kind of a sort of looser interpreter of halacha, of Jewish law. That he was a spirit of the law type of guy versus a letter of the law type of person. And Shammai is painted the opposite way, that Shammai was sort of a fundamentalist and was a very letter of the law type of person. Now, as with any time when you gloss over people, you're going to miss kind of what they truly are. You're going to miss the finer points. If you want to learn more about the differences between the school of Hillel, the house of Hillel, Beth Hillel, and Beth Shammai, I highly recommend the Hillel biography that was written by Rabbi Tolushkin. It was published by Next Book. It's a very easy read. You can probably get through it in, 4 or 5 days if you, read a chapter a day, or, well, you need to read more than a chapter a day. But it's double-spaced. It's really easy to get through. But it's a great book that talks about the history of these 2 guys and their personality and what their views were on things. Now, Hillel sort of ended up being right most of the time. And I mean right in the sense that more rabbis agreed with his particular halakhic decisions as opposed to Shammai. So that is why, and this is a roundabout way of saying it, but that's basically why we have Tu B'Shvat, because people agreed that the birthday of the trees was on the 15th of Shevat. And there you go. That's it. Now, if you want to read more about that particular text, I've included in the notes a little link to that beginning of the tractate from a website that has the Talmud translated into English. And it's a really good link. There's all kinds of great resources on there, so I highly recommend it. Okay, any questions about the Talmud, Mishnah, Beth Hillel, Beth Shammai, anything related to that? And no is a socially good, a socially acceptable answer as well. I just want to make sure we get to everybody, because I know sometimes people are shy, and plus, people will email me after the fact. They'll email me questions afterwards, and they're usually great questions, and I always think, gee, I really wish that question would have been in the class, because I bet other people thought the same thing. Okay, so we'll go on ahead and move past Talmud. Even though I know everyone loves studying Talmud, it's like everyone's favorite thing. Okay, so the real question is, why should we care? So does anyone have a sense of why we should care when Tu B'Shvat is? I mean, you have this debate here. Some say it was the first of Shevat. You have another group of people who say it was the 15th. Well, who cares, right? Could we have just met in the middle and say that it was the afternoon of the 7th? Or, you know, maybe we could have done it some other time, like when we really desperately wanted a holiday. Do we have a sense of why we need to be concerned about when Tu B'Shvat is? Does it seem logical at all? And come to find out it is, and it is for some pretty sort of obscure reasons. And I'll give you a hint. It has something to do with mitzvot, and it has to do something with trees. Are there any mitzvahs that are related to trees, or perhaps the product of those trees? And I'm just going to do a little dance like this until someone comes up with an idea. Any thoughts? Okay. So, there's a few sort of bullet point reasons why it's sort of why we should care, because otherwise it does seem kind of obscure and silly. You know, why debate about when this holiday that we don't even really recognize biblically as existing? You know, why would we even care, right? Okay. Well, here's why. So we have a few concepts. We have orla, which is the biblical prohibition of eating fruit of trees produced during the first 3 years after they're planted. So this is a piece of Levitical code. We have this other prohibition, or no, not a prohibition, a commandment rather, to bring the 4th year fruit crops to Jerusalem as a tithe. Okay, and then we have something from the Deuteronomist text that says that there was a tithe given to the poor, and it was calculated by whether the fruit had ripened before or after, supposedly after Tu B'Shvat. So that's why. It all relates to the giving of tithes and sort of things of that nature. And there you go. Actually, everyone just did it. Like, right as I was talking, that's when everyone did it. So I'm sorry that I jumped in front of everyone. I apologize. I should have waited a little bit longer. But yeah, that's exactly why. Because it has to deal with gathering fruit, and it has to deal with giving it to other people. So the concern, this is a great thing. The idea that we are concerning ourselves not with some obscure biblical thing, like when are we going to celebrate a holiday? It's not like, oh, when is the Tu B'Shvat party, right? Like, that's not what it's about. It's actually about giving tzedakah, and it's about giving a tithe to the temple. And, you know, you find that throughout the Talmud, a lot of what the Talmud argues, and a lot of what these rabbis were arguing, really just had to deal with things that are tikkun olam related, and that were related to serving God, and that were related to blessing, and all of these other things. It's not simply just a group of rabbis arguing about, when to have the Tu B'Shvat Seder, or when to have the big, fruit party. So I think that that's a pretty cool thing about this particular holiday. It has to do with observing mitzvot and not about anything else. Okay, so then we get into Kabbalah. So 17th century rabbi Yitzhak Luria of Safed, who is sort of like the Elvis of Kabbalah. I mean, he is the main guy. When we talk about Kabbalah, we're really talking about Isaac Luria, or Yitzhak Luria. So his disciples, him and his disciples, they created this Tu B'Shvat Seder that celebrated the Tree of Life. Okay, so there is this idea of a Kabbalistic map of basically the Sephirot, which are the emanations of God. And they are on branches of this great Eitz Chaim, this tree of life. And so they did the logical jump where they connected, okay, birthday of the trees, tree of life, Kabbalah, let's party. And that's basically how that came together. Now, if you're going to have a Seder, it would make sense that you would have some sort of liturgy to go with it, that you would have a Haggadah, basically. So the earliest published version of the Seder is called Pri Eitz Hadar, which means the fruit of the beautiful tree. Now, this is sort of interesting piece of history that I didn't know about. So it was written by Nathan of Gaza. Now, Nathan of Gaza, I mean, that's not exactly a name you hear every day, but what's really interesting is he was a supporter of Sabbatai Zvi, who claimed himself to be the Messiah, who claimed himself to be Moshiach, and ended up actually converting to Islam. So you would think that maybe Tu B'Shvat would have kind of gotten a black eye over that one, considering that the guy who wrote the, Tu B'Shvat Seder ended up deciding that he was a prophet for a guy who claimed he was the Messiah, and then later backtracked and said, oh snap, no, I'm actually converting to Islam. Kind of an interesting piece of history there. But, this was basically the idea, was that you would have a Seder that connected this obscure Talmudic reference to the Tree of Life, and that you would have something similar to a Passover Seder. And, it's pretty interesting stuff. So, quick question. Has anyone here had or been to or conducted a Tu B'Shvat Seder? Does anyone have any experience with it in any way at all? And I think we have kind of a newbie crowd when it comes to the Tu B'Shvat Seder, but I'm just curious if anyone has any kind of experiences with it at all, has read anything about it, because one of the things that's interesting about the Tu B'Shvat Seder is that since there is no, Haggadah of sorts for a Tu B'Shvat Seder, it's something that's non-biblical. It's really just referenced as this one point in Tractate Rosh Hashanah. There's really not much that goes with it. You can kind of do whatever you want. And so it's interesting to see how different people, how different groups have taken Tu B'Shvat and really used it as sort of a blank canvas for creating really interesting sort of Jewish art, Jewish liturgical art. So Tracy has some experience and Ailette has some experience. I'd be curious to know, as I'm sort of talking about the Seder, if you'd like to share what your experiences were with the Tu B'Shvat Seder that you attended or wrote or whatever the case may be. I'd love to get some feedback from you on what that was like. Because since there is no set liturgy, and I'll give you an example. Passover. There are Passover Seders that take 4 hours. I mean, you can be at that table forever. Um, then you can do the 30-minute Seder. There's actually a book called the 30-minute Seder, and it's perfectly halakhically acceptable because it includes everything that you have to do, and it strips out everything that is sort of meaningful for some people, and then for other people unnecessary. So, you know, at least with the Haggadah, even if you stray from tradition, you at least have some sort of framework for what a Haggadah is. You know, we know, okay, this is about Passover. We know that, you know, we're going to mention the plagues. We're going to eat matzah. We're going to drink wine. There's going to be something involving the kids, and then the kids are going to hide the afikomen. You know, you have these sort of, you imagine the Passover Seder is kind of like driving down the highway. You know that you start at one destination and you're going to end at another, and it doesn't really matter what roads you take. You know you're going to get there eventually, and you'll probably see the same stuff along the way. That's basically what the Passover Seder is. You can veer off one way or another, but you're still going to eventually find your way. Tu B'Shvat, you don't have that. You don't have a sort of traditional liturgy. You don't have any mitzvot. You know, there's really nothing to do there. You know, even something like Hanukkah. So, I mean, we have a very limited number of things that we actually have to do on Hanukkah. You have to light a menorah, and, you know, you eat something that's made with oil. Okay, well, there you go. That takes 2 minutes, right? And it's a similar idea with Tu B'Shvat, but literally, we have nothing with Tu B'Shvat. And for some people, that can be really hard, because what do you do with a holiday that you don't necessarily have to do anything for? It can be a little tricky. So let's see what some people have to say. So Ailette says, I remember eating lots of fruits and nuts, not so much the liturgy. Tracy says, both times the leader used one that she found online at some website, can't remember the name, lasted for an hour, ate lots of fruits and nuts in addition to dinner. I don't know if I was more full to bursting from that or from Pesach, from Passover. Nice. Okay, so what I want to offer up is basically a set of parameters for what a Tu B'Shvat Seder can be. Now, at the bottom of the notes, I've included links to 3, I don't know if they call them Tu B'Shvat Haggadot or Tu B'Shvat Seder services. I'm just calling them Haggadot. Technically, they're not Haggadot, but whatever. So Hillel, which is a Jewish college organization, sort of like a student union, for lack of a better word. They have a service that they use. I have a link to that. Aish HaTorah, which is an Orthodox organization. They have a Tu B'Shvat Seder. And then Ritual Well, which is a Reconstructionist website. They have several different types of Tu B'Shvat Seders in there. So what I would recommend is download all 3 and look them over and see what you like, see what you don't like, and come up with your own thing. You have every freedom in the world to. You don't have to feel like this is some, that's like kind of a hippie thing and only hippies write. I want the true liturgy. Well, tough. You have to write your own thing. So it is what it is. Okay. So, but what I want to do is, I know some people don't want to do that. They want the parameters and all of that. So if you're going to write one and you don't want to write it completely from scratch, and you don't want to use the Hillel, the Aish HaTorah, or the Ritual Well resources, this sort of series that I have here is a good starting place. It at least gives you some milestones, and you can work towards coming up with something that works for you. So it all revolves around 4s, okay? So we have 4 kinds of fruit, and we have 4 kinds of wine, or 4 glasses of wine. Start with talking about blessings. So Technically, Tu B'Shvat, you wouldn't light candles in the same way that you would light for Hanukkah or Pesach or whatever the case may be. If you wanted to, go right ahead. The blessing would be very similar to all the other candle lighting blessings. And actually, it would be appropriate at the end to reference Tu B'Shvat because the way that the Hebrew works for the candle lighting blessing is it's actually a later form of Hebrew. As an example, you have the phrase shel. Shel of is what that word means. That is a later rabbinic word. If you later Hebrew word. If you look in the Bible, you don't really, or in the Torah, I should say, you don't find shel. People didn't use the word of back then. So Tu B'Shvat, it's a later concept. This is later Hebrew. It works. So this blessing would be Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kitshanu B'Mitzvotav V'Tzivanu Shel Tu B'Shvat. Okay, that's if you really want to take the candle lighting concept and do something with it. Now, here would be my recommendation. Instead of doing that, since Tu B'Shvat is sort of not really a candle lighting type of holiday, I should say, I would suggest saying Shehekianu. So Shehekianu is something that you say at the first occurrence of something. So the first night of Hanukkah, you would say Shehekianu. Shehekianu is, I think, appropriate for a time like this because you're talking about the new year of the trees. And for a lot of people, it's a new experience of going to a Tu B'Shvat Seder, and also you only do one Tu B'Shvat Seder a year. It's not like you have multiple ones. So I feel the Shehekianu is appropriate. So that's Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kitshanu B'Mitzvotav Shehekianu V'Kiyamanu V'Hikiyanu Lazman Hazeh. I have all of these blessings in the notes. They're transliterated. You can print that out and have it ready for you. Now, you have to, in sort of traditional Jewish practice, wash your hands before eating a meal of bread. Now, the Tu B'Shvat Seder that I've included here doesn't have bread in it. But if you're going to have a full meal with bread, in addition to the sort of Seder fruits, you would want to do ritual hand washing. So you could, as an example, have a challah that has dried fruit and nut in it or something like that. And that's a way that you could combine the Tu B'Shvat idea with motzi, with the blessing of motzi, and kind of have it all wrapped into one thing. So if you're going to do that, you have to do hand washing. So that's Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Kitshanu B'Mitzvotav V'Tzivanu Al Netilat Yadayim. And then when you would do the bread, and I don't actually have that, but it's a traditional bread blessing. You could either do the sort of camp version, which is Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. You could do that, or you could just say Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. That's if you're doing the whole bread thing. Now, if you're just doing the Seder, if you're not going to have a meal with bread, then you can skip the hand washing and you can skip the motzi and the whole deal. Okay, so the actual Seder itself, you're going to have two blessings that you're going to have to do if you're going to do it. So you have wine blessing and you have the fruit of the tree. So wine is Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Borei Peri Hagafen. Okay? Fruit of the tree, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Borei Peri Ha'etz. Ha'etz, the tree. Now, you would say these blessings before you commit the mitzvah. So, if you are going to drink the wine, you say the wine blessing first. If you're going to eat fruit of the tree, then you would do the fruit blessing. Okay, so let's talk about the kinds of fruit and the kinds of wine. Whenever I have been to a Tu B'Shvat Seder, the wine is usually what is done first. Then there is some kind of reading, and then you have the blessing for the fruit, and then the eating of the fruit. So I'm going to say that one more time. Blessing for wine, drink the wine, some kind of meaningful reading, blessing for the fruit, eating the fruit. Wash, rinse, repeat. So we'll start with the wine. The wine progression goes from white to red. And so you would start the first part of the 4-part Seder with drinking some white wine. And then you would have the fruit. Then when you go to the next glass of wine, you would do white wine with a drop of red wine in it. So you think of a full glass, or whatever you're calling a glass. Maybe not a full glass, but however much would be a portion of the wine. Typically, in order to say a blessing over wine, it needs to be about 4 ounces. It's a cheekful. So you have the glass of wine, and then you put a drop of red in there. You say the blessing, you drink, you have a reading, you do the fruit. Then when you do the next glass of wine, this is when you flip things. So you have a glass of red wine with a drop of white in it. Eat the fruit, the whole deal. Then the last glass of wine that you have is solid red. So you go from white to basically a rosé to red wine with a drop of white and then just solid red. Now, the fruit that corresponds to each of those glasses of wine. So the first fruit is typically hard on the outside and soft on the inside. So you could do something like a walnut, you could do a coconut, you could do an almond, you could do anything that has the hard exterior and then a soft interior. But it needs to be basically totally unedible. Just nothing that you could eat at all on the outside. So that's a good place to start. The second fruit that you would eat is soft on the outside with a pit in the center. So you could do olives, dates, peaches, apricots, something like that. The third fruit is soft throughout and completely edible. So that could be figs, grapes, raisins, something like that. And then finally, the last fruit that you would have, and this is a little bit tricky. This is a tough skin on the outside, but a sweet fruit within. So it's a little tougher to figure that one out, but the best that I could do would be something like a papaya. I've written mangoes, but I think papaya is actually more appropriate. A banana is another great option. It's anything where you could potentially eat the skin, but you're not going to. It's not really something you want to eat. It's just a tough skin. And then you have a really sweet, delicious fruit on the inside. So if anyone has any ideas about what those could be curious to know what everyone thinks. Because when I was looking through and trying to remember what I've done in the past and events that I've been to, I had a little trouble with that one, to be honest with you. Okay, so let's see. We've got all kinds of great comments here. So Alet says, I remember everyone at this Tu B'Shvat Seder brought one of the 7 species for dinner. It was like a potluck of the produce which fits into the different levels. So this is the different Kabbalistic levels. So you have Asiya, Yetzirah, Beria, and the food and produce of the trees was the focus, celebrating the rebirth for the new year. I think that's absolutely beautiful. Completely. Tracy mentions using pineapple, which is really cool. We could totally use pineapple. The idea for that last one, though, is the idea that it's something that you could eat, but you're not going to. You could eat a mango, you could eat a banana, but, yuck. Are you really going to do that? But a coconut, you could never do, right? Now, there's a reason for that. I'll mention why that is. But let's talk about the reading aspect. So what are you going to read in between drinking this wine and eating this fruit as your body starts to go into sugar shock? What are you going to read? So there's all sorts of Kabbalistic stuff you can read, and obviously, in the notes that I've included here with these links, there's all kinds of readings that you can do. One thing that I think is cool is if you're going to have a Tu B'Shvat Seder that's going to have 4 people, or maybe 8 people if it's couples or something like that, you can have people choose. So I've actually seen that before, where each person was assigned some kind of some sort of fruit that represented them in some way, and so they brought something to go with that. Or, you're number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Pick a piece of liturgy that you would want to read, or pick a poem, or some sort of interesting spiritual insight, and you can kind of do it that way. And so it's like potluck liturgy. Which can be kind of cool. I mean, I dig that. I think that's fun. That's basically how we write the liturgy here at OneShul. It's sort of potluck liturgy. So that's a way of doing it. If you have a poetry book, or you have some other Siddur, you could obviously pick from there. You could also pick lines of Tehillim, of Psalms, so you could read the poems that are in the Bible. That would also be appropriate as well. So, again, this is the beauty of Tu B'Shvat. You can come up with what's most meaningful to you. And, if you have children, you can talk to them about the fruit. What is this fruit? Where does it come from? Things like that. And that can be a really nice way of connecting it to nature and to ecology, and learning about sustainable food and where our food comes from. And we should be grateful that people grew this food for us. So that's another excellent opportunity right there. I'm going to tell you, here's what for me, I mean, the Kabbalistic stuff, okay, I've seen that and I've done that. I think perhaps this is a consequence of being in rabbinical school, that I'm, I'm sort of over liturgy a little bit. I'm a little bit sort of done with it. One of the things that I like is the idea of connecting it to something that is real for people. And that's not to say that talking about God and talking about liturgy isn't real. It's very real. But I think that a lot of times in Judaism, we have a hard time connecting, what it is that we are reading about in a prayer book, or reading in a Haggadah, or in a bencher, or a song of some sort, to something that is true to our modern experience. When I think about spiritual leaders and writers that I really like, they're not all necessarily Jewish. And that's not to say that I'm a traitor to Judaism. Although, if you read my article on Kaveller recently, apparently I'm like trying to destroy bar mitzvahs, which is a whole other deal. But that's a whole other conversation. I feel like one of the things that we have a problem with in Judaism is we try so desperately to connect everything back to something that we feel is more authentically Jewish, that I think sometimes it's hard for us to accept that the reality that we live in now is just as Jewish as something that happened in the past. We are just as Jewish now as we were in the ghettos of Poland, as we were in, the Second Temple times, as we were in the First Temple times. Just as Jewish. We're all dealing with the same basic sets of spiritual issues. And the sense that we have of we need to keep going to somewhere in the past where they did it right, where they had the right words to say, or they had the right liturgy, or they had the right Jewish approach, and we just need to sort of find a way to make it relevant today. I would say find what's relevant and make it Jewish, as opposed to finding something's Jewish and making it relevant. So here's what I would offer as a sort of a spiritual idea for how to approach the Tu B'Shvat Seder. Recognizing that trees grow in the ground, that our fruit is coming from the earth, and the fact that, in the Jewish narrative, we talk about Adam, the original human, as coming from earth. We come from the same place. We evolved in the same place. I'd like to offer up that the progression of the fruit is actually a series of insights about what it means to be truly human. So we start with the first fruit, the fruit that is hard on the outside and soft on the inside. Okay? So, what kind of person is hard on the outside and soft on the inside? Who is a person that, is got a lot of exterior and has a lot of closed doors, has a lot of barriers that they put between themselves and the rest of the world, but on the inside is soft. And by that I mean they're a little broken on some level. And we've all been that person. And you'll see throughout this progression that, we are these different kinds of people at different points. But I think we can really reflect on, this idea of what it means to be so tough on the outside and so soft on the inside, and what that experience is like and what that challenge is like. And does that really work? If you are so hard on the outside and then so kind of soft on the inside, no one can ever really get through you. You look at the fruit that you're supposed to eat here, and you have to break it. If you want to get to the soft, nut filling in a walnut, you have to take a hammer or a shoe or something and break it. If you, want to eat a coconut, you have to take, a machete and you have to break it in half. It takes a lot of force to finally get into that softness. And that's tough. And, if you were handed a coconut and said, go for it, you'd have to be either very violent to finally get to what's edible, what's consumable, or you'd give up if you didn't have any resources to help break through. You just would gnaw on it until you gave up. So no one wants to be that person. That's the wrong kind of person to be. So you move on to the next fruit. So this is fruit that is soft on the outside, but has a pit in the center. So I imagine this is the kind of person that everyone calls a tzaddik, calls saintly. What a wonderful person. Did you know that so-and-so, he's always giving money to the poor. He's always at the synagogue. Did you know he serves meals to the homeless? Did you know he, is a great defender of Israel? Did you know that he raised 10 kids all on his own? Or she raised, a child on her own while working 3 jobs and putting herself through night school? What a saintly, wonderful human being. Okay, that's the person we want to hope we are. But some of us are like that on the outside, but then we have this hard rock on the inside. So the Torah talks about, there's this obscure line that says, circumcise your heart. And I sort of imagine that that's what this is, that there's this callus inside us, our soul that is trapped in something that's hard as a rock, that's a pit inside of us. And we may be so soft and wonderful on the outside, and we may be very guru-like and helping everyone, but then when you get into the core, when you finally, take that bite of that person, when you learn that person, when you take in who that person is, you find out that there's just a rock right there where their heart is supposed to be. And that all this stuff that you see on the outside is good, but you can never get to the core. You can never really get to the essence of where that person is. The softness and the beauty of the person on the outside is, not a reflection of who they actually are on the inside. This is the kind of person who does all the right things for the wrong reason. And we don't want to be that person. So then there's another kind of person who is completely soft throughout. So this is a fig or a grape, okay? And that seems like a really holy person. We would really put that person up. Because they are everything that is good about the person who's soft on the outside and hard on the inside, but they're not hard on the inside, they're soft on the inside. This is the kind of person who gives up everything for everyone all the time and never asks for anything and doesn't have any resentment about it at all. This is the truly selfless human being. And so we think, oh, okay, well, that's an unrealistic goal, but, I'd like to be that person. I want to be the person who will, give the shirt off my back to anyone and not feel any resentment about it at all. Well, the truth of the matter is that's unrealistic. And look at what this fruit is. It's something that you literally just pop in your mouth and swallow. You don't have to put any... When was the last time you really thought about a grape? When was the last time you really put any effort into eating a fig? Unless you're me, in which case you slice the figs and, you decorate them on a tray and it's, really over the top and Food Network-y. You don't really think about it. You just grab it, bite it. It's like fast food. Well, do you want to be a fast food person? Do you want to be a person who other people just can swallow whole? Because that's what will happen to you. If you're completely soft, people will take advantage of you. And that doesn't do you any good, and it doesn't do anyone else any good. This is kind of martyrdom syndrome, where people have felt like over the course of their life, they've had to be completely soft, and they've had to give in to everything all the time. And that somehow makes them a better, holier person on a certain level. And it doesn't. It doesn't help, because it doesn't help you, and it doesn't help other people, because in the metaphor of fruit, you'll get swallowed alive. Okay, so then we're offered this final piece of fruit. So this is fruit that has a tough skin on the outside and sweet fruit within. So a tough skin, so let's take a banana. You could, in theory, bite right into a banana. I mean, I don't really suggest it, but you could, just take a banana and bite right into it and chew it up and swallow it if you wanted to. But think about the outside of a banana. Think of the peel of a banana. Yeah, you could eat it, but it's not really going to taste that good, and it's going to be kind of hard to eat it, and you won't really appreciate all the good stuff that's on the inside if you just bite it whole. At the same time, it is edible. It's not like the coconut, where you can't get through it, and that you have to ravage it in order to eat it. You can just take a bite. It's just not the best way to experience it. So what you have to do is you have to peel it. When you peel it, something really cool happens. You peel the top of the banana, and you can actually hold it from the peel. You won't get your hands all sticky and gross, and you can enjoy the top of it. And eventually, you just peel down, and it's the perfect meal. And then you just throw out the banana peel, or compost it, or whatever the case is. All right? This is a terrific kind of fruit, because it's not completely edible. It holds well together. So you think of like a papaya. A papaya holds itself well together because it has a nice tough skin that's going to hold it in. Bananas are the same way. They hold together. But you can still enjoy it, and it's not a difficult thing to eat. And I would suggest that that's how we need to be. We need to have tough exteriors. They don't need to be rock hard. They don't need to be like the shell of a walnut. But we need to have something that keeps us in. What is the biggest organ in the human body? And it's not the brain. It's the skin. The skin is what holds us in. It keeps us from getting sick. If we were completely exposed all the time, germs would get in, right? If we were completely soft all the time, germs would get in, right? So we have this wonderful skin that protects us. But on the inside, we're vulnerable. And, I think that this is a terrific metaphor. It's a great balance for how to live your life. To have a tough skin, not a hard skin, but a tough skin. But then to be soft on the inside. And the people that I have met in my life who have figured that out, who can kind of have that boundary, that tough skin boundary, but then really be soft on the inside, those are the people who do the most good for others, which should be our goal. So, I really think that is, a particularly great way to live, is to have that balance. So I would offer up, this kavanah, this intention, to the practice of the Tu B'Shvat Seder. We can definitely connect it to environmentalism. We can definitely connect it to Kabbalah. We can connect it to the Talmud. We can connect it to all of these different things. We can connect it to agriculture. Darian mentions the point of the giving tree. That's a great book. Shel Silverstein, great book to read at the Tu B'Shvat Seder, particularly if you have kids, because they'll really relate to it. But what if we tried relating it to ourselves? And we sort of thought about where at different times have we fallen along this Seder? When have we been, hard on the outside and soft on the inside? When have we been tough on the outside and soft on the inside? And conversely, when have we been soft on the outside but been just, tough, rough, hard as a rock in our core? And when have we been, so soft that we've allowed people to bite right through us? Because, throughout the course of your life, even throughout the course of a week or a day, you can be any of these people. So I would say let's try connecting those ideas to what our day-to-day experience is and talk about those ideas. And I think that would be a new, interesting, meaningful way of thinking about the Tu B'Shvat Seder. So, are there any questions? Does anyone have anything they want to know more about? Go on ahead and type it in the chat room, but I'll go on ahead and just say thank you for coming. I really appreciate having you here. Again, we are a very small community, and by small, I mean 43,000 people. And, we'd love to have you involved. You can lead a service, you can lead a class, you can write for our blogs. If you do graphic design, we always need graphic designers. We always need sort of techie, webby people who are great at WordPress and things like that. We're always looking for podcasters. And of course, one of the best ways you can help is to donate. We encourage people to give $5 per class or per event that you go to. We have about 8 people right now who are in the chat room. If each person here gave $5, we would have $40. And it would be fantastic because $40 would pay for the cost of our chat system. So we could literally pay for our chat system tonight if you enjoyed this event. And if you can give 5, give 10. That's all I ask. So, thank you very much for coming. We have lots of online events that are going to be coming up. You can check our calendar for all of those resources. We also have our prayer request wall and our Yahrzeit wall. If you need to memorialize someone or if you have a prayer request, please go on ahead and put those up. All prayer requests are anonymous, so you don't have to be concerned about someone knowing that it's you or whatever the case may be. And of course, this video is archived on our YouTube channel as well as on our website, so you can watch it afterwards if you need to review kind of what we talked about. So again, thank you very much for coming. Please donate. Please donate your time. We really need you here in this community, and I want you to remember, most importantly, that you matter. Thanks a lot.